Good afternoon. We are here today for our seminar. In this seminar, we will have here Professor Phoebe Koundouri. It's a pleasure for us to have here. Thank you, Phoebe, to be here. Now I start the presentation as usual. So I remember that this seminar is involved in a seminar of economic modeling seminars that we started in December with Robert Pindyck, Jeffrey Hill, and Professor Zwart. After we restarted with Professor Richard Toll and Dirk Bergman, and Professor Gollier in February, and in March we had Professor Waarderploeg and Professor Gerlag. Now we have the pleasure, as I told you today, to have here Professor Phoebe Koundouri, that is our last seminar before the conference, because I remember that this is this called Economic Modeling Seminars, is a list of seminars organized by Italian Association of Environmental Resource Economists, University of Brescia, Fondazione Enrico Mattei, with the collaboration with European University Institute, Università di Siena, the Department of Environmental Science and Policy of University of Milan, and the Department of Economic and Management of the University of Padua. This is a pathway that includes all the most important economists in the world about the political economy and energy and environment, speaking about uncertainty and social welfare involved in environmental and resource economists. This is a pathway that converts to, we have called this Road to IARE 2021, that is our conference. This conference will, this is the poster of our conference that represents exactly the conference that will be held in 21st and 23rd of April, will be organized and virtually will be held by the University of Brescia and Fondazione Enrico Mattei, with the help and the support of all the organizations that you are able to see below. And this pathway will converge with three important events. The first is with our two important keynote speakers that will be Professor and Nobel Prize of Economics William Nordhaus. The title of the presentation will be Bridging the Gap Between Policy and Aspiration of Climate Policy. Will be held on April 21st at 4 o'clock. The second will be on 22nd of April at 4 o'clock. The professor will be Professor Robert Pindyck, and the title will be Climate and Other Catastrophes. Finally, we will have a side event. This side event will be held and is organized at April 23rd at 4 o'clock. The title will be The Energy Transition, the Next Generation EU, Challenges and Opportunities. Will be with this important number of professors and also CEO. You can see that there will be the Professor Pindyck, Professor Waarderploeg from MIT and Oxford University, the Minister of Enrico Giovannini, and the CEO of A2A, that is Mazzoncini, CEO of Feralpi Pasini, and President of Acque Bresciane, that is Del Val. Will be also the chair of this will be Sissi Bellomo of Il Sole 24 Ore, that is our important financial newspaper in Italy. The next seminar, so we will conclude the next this list of seminars with a conference. We will start on May with Metcalf, Professor Metcalf of Tufts University. You can see here. We'll be organizing, so we will see information about. Today we will have here Professor Koundouri. I introduce her as usual. She's professor of economic theory and econometrics at the School of Economics, Athens University of Economics and Business. Her research is about these topics that are interdisciplinary system analysis, environmental and natural resources economics, microeconomics modeling and econometrics, sustainable development. I have to say that it's a pleasure to read the very long CV of Phoebe, but is about this you can see about she as the fellow of World Academy of Art and Science. She's president-elect of European Association of Environmental and Resource Economists. She's president-elect. The next year will be the president of EAERE. She's director research laboratory on socio-economic environmental sustainability at Athens University of Economics and Business. She's director Sustainable Development Unit, Athena Informatics Research Center, director of the EIT Climate KIC HUB CRIS, co-chair United Nations Sustainable Development Solution Network in Europe and also in Greece, if I remember, chair International Center for Research on the Environmental and the Economy, that is ICRE8, chair Scientific Advisory Board, European Forest Institute. She's also commissioner at the prestigious Lancet COVID-19 Commission, is co-chaired on gel-based green recovery task force, and she's president of Global Climate Change Task Force about Green Growth International. So you can see very long and important elements that are also combined with a long of papers. About this, she has more than 250 papers. About this, as usual, I have chosen some of these that are, we have a very long, especially in our list of papers, but we are about this, there is a Journal of Environmental Economics and Management, American Journal of Agricultural Economics, Ecological Economics, Environmental and Source Economics, Renewable Energy Policy, among many others. You can see that are long. About this, there are also 15 books and more than 450 published papers and chapters. Among the books, I have chosen 5 that are more or less representative of the topic that are developed, studied by Phoebe, that are water resource allocations, the economics of water management in the developing countries, a book on the use of economic evaluation environmental policy. One is on econometrics informing natural resource management, and one that is the last one that I have read is the Ocean of Tomorrow. Finally, we have to say that it's a pleasure also because Phoebe is listed in the most cited women economists in the world. According to the international ranking of the most influential authors, that is IDEAS, she's among the top authors, especially environmental economics, but not only. So as usual, I've taken one of these most important. And about this also, there is a very long list of projects that is very amazing. She since 1997, she has coordinated more than 100 research projects with a large interdisciplinary team, more than 200 researchers. Part of this number of these in the last 10 years are in these topics that are Sustainable Blue Growth, 23 project, Water, Food, Energy Nexus, 18 project, Climate Change Mitigation and Adaptation and Sustainable Finance, 22, Innovation Acceleration Projects, 25 projects, and 2021 prestigious ERC Synergy Grant about water futures. So finally, after this long introduction, but it depends exactly on this important role that Phoebe has in research and among the world, it's a pleasure to have here. I thank again Phoebe. Now I leave the floor to Phoebe.
Thank you so much, Sergio. It's a real pleasure being with you today. The theme, but also many institutions in Italy have been instrumental in advancing environmental economics, and it is a huge honor and great pleasure to be invited to talk with you. Thank you very much for the long introduction. It is truly an honor to be with all of you. Today, I want to talk to you about sustainable recovery from COVID-19 and some work that we did as a UN SDSN Europe on co-developing the future vision for a sustainable and resilient Europe and co-designing the pathways via this research innovation policy interface. These days, I start all my speeches with this triple tsunami that we are facing, obviously the pandemic and the attempts to control the epidemic with social distancing and biomedical research, the huge recession that derives from the pandemic at the moment, although we have been devising recovery and resilient plans that have a more long-run vision, at the moment we've seen the short reaction of the different economies in order to avoid the pandemic turn into a major economic and financial crisis that will long outlast the health crisis. So we've been focusing on keeping the workforce employed, on governments trying to channel financial support to the vulnerable citizens, to safeguard SMEs against bankruptcy, policies to support the financial system because non-performing loans mount, and of course the recovery and resilient plans that I'm going to come back later on. And within these two tsunamis of crisis, we are of course facing the mother of all crises, the climate crisis. I don't have to refer to this. We all know that at the moment there is no country that is not experiencing the drastic effects of climate change that translate into annual average economic losses in the hundreds of billions, but also in people being killed between 1998 and 2017. 1.3 million people have been killed and 4.4 million injured from climate-related catastrophes. At the moment, the current nationally determined country contributions are inadequate to achieve the Paris Agreement, and at the moment, we are at the pathway of a temperature increase of at least plus 3 degrees Celsius, and this is the latest UNEP emissions gap report. Now, what are we doing about all this? Well, as UN SDSN, we launched SDSN Europe, which counts over 400 member institutions. These are academic institutions, universities, or research institutions. And our mission here is to align the European recovery with the Agenda 2030, with the 17 SDGs. And this is exactly what I'm going to show you today with some more additions from my own research. But this is a report that I co-led with Jeff Sachs, and FIM was an important contributor with a big team together with an ENA Foundation, the International Energy Agency, UCL, Mariana's Mazzucato team, and the University of Rome. Our work as the senior working group on the European Green Deal, which is one of the two main initiatives of SDSN Europe. The first initiative is the Sustainable Development Report of Europe that measures the performance of each and every country with regards to each of the SDGs and the targets within the SDGs. And this second initiative focuses on identifying the transformations for the joint implementation of Agenda 2030 for sustainable development and the European Green Deal. So our job was to showcase the alignment between the SDGs and the European Green Deal and develop pathways for a green, digital, job-based, inclusive recovery from COVID-19. The lead authors had many authors helping us, and this was a group effort, and I hope it makes sense to show this in this seminar, because I think these are important, it has some important messages that can help the conversations between the policy and science interface. The first message is that we have a moral responsibility to build for better, not back, but for better, because the recovery packages will be financed by national debt. So in effect, they will be paid by the future generations. So we need to care about them when we are devising the recovery and resilient plans and implementing them. The good news is that there is an economic case for building for better. Recent simulations of the effect of green recovery plans worldwide confirm that the green economic stimulus is more growth enhancing than a return to normal stimulus. Beyond fiscal stimulus that is expected to boost aggregate demand, this crisis calls for transformative public investments. They need to come in and shape a sustainable and fair and green and digital transition and create the economic circumstances in terms of reduced uncertainty that will allow leveraging private sector investment. Our long-term vision is, of course, UN Agenda 2030 with the 17 SDGs and the Paris Agreement. And the European Green Deal provides the right level of ambition and direction for the implementation of the SDGs and the Paris Agreement. And at the moment, it is the best example in the world for providing a pathway for implementing the SDGs and the Paris Agreement. Our report connects the formation policies, the SDGs, the European Green Deal, the European semester process, and the EU recovery plan. And the aim was to support policymakers with actionable strategies that can guide the EU-wide and national economic recovery in line with the European overarching sustainability agenda. So just to put on one page all the relevant policies, the important relevant policies, it's of course the SDGs and the 169 targets within them, is the Paris Agreement. It's the IPCC report that points to a required limitation of the increase in temperature that will not exceed the 1.5 degrees Celsius. And a year after that, in New York Climate Change Week, as UN SDSN, we've announced the 6 major transformation pathways for achieving the SDGs. I think it's important to showcase the the substance of these transformation pathways. 17 SDGs are too many to be prioritized by any government. Government needs to be sharp and needs to be explicit in terms of their priorities so that they can, at the end of the day, show results. So these transformation pathways show 2 points. First, how a government can implement the SDGs in a way that is consistent with the organizational structure of European governments. And these are transformations with regards to education, health, energy, decarbonization, sustainable food, land, water, and ocean, sustainable cities and communities, and the digital revolution for sustainable development. The other point is that each transformation concerns all of the SDGs, and the SDGs are one SDGs, are not 17 separated goals. They are one holistic, integrated goal, and this is how we should go about implementing them. Of course, in 2019, we have the European Green Deal, the 4 main axes. We all know about them: climate neutrality by 2050, protection of human life and animals from pollution, clean tech leadership of European companies, and leave no one behind, inclusiveness. And of course, the European Climate Law and the European Climate Pact will be instrumental in implementing the European Green Deal, which comes with 1 trillion budget behind it, some of it coming from the MFF. The other half hope to be leveraged by public-private partnerships. And of course, every semester we have the European semester process that provides recommendations to the countries with regards to what they need to focus and improve in order to align with the European average. In 2020, we have the coronavirus, and because of that, the new MFF of the European Commission comes with an additional 750 billion, which basically makes the next generation EU and focuses on the recovery from the pandemic. The Recovery and Resilience Facility amounts to 672.5 billion. And the good news is that these investments that will be financed by the Recovery and Resilience plans remain within the concept and the spirit of the European Green Deal. The investments need to be 37% mainstream. They need to respect the do no significant harm principle with regards to the environment, and they need to be 20% digital mainstream. So the future is digital and green. The recovery is digital and green, and the recovery should be streamlined along the sustainable report flagships of the European Commission. These are power up with regards to clean technologies and renewable, renovate energy efficiency of buildings, recharge and refuel, sustainable transport and charging stations, connect, roll out of rapid broadband services, modernize with regards to digitalization of public administration, scale up data cloud capacities and sustainable processors, reskilling and upskilling. And of course, at the end of the day, we know that just before the end of 2020, the member state leaders have agreed to increasing their ambition with regards to reduction in global greenhouse gas emissions up to 55%. Our approach was, the first step of our approach was to cross-map the SDGs with the European Green Deal and the European semester process. And what we did was to investigate how the text of the European Green Deal and the 9 different European Green Deal policies, biodiversity, farm to fork, sustainable agriculture, clean energy, sustainable industry, building and renovating, sustainable mobility, eliminating pollution and climate action, connect explicitly or implicitly to the 17 SDGs and the targets within the 17 SDGs. Where you see a dark box, we have an explicit reference in European Green Deal to the SDGs. Where you see a light green box, we have an implicit reference. And as you can see, we have a game of mirror imaging. The European Green Deal is the SDGs, and the SDGs are the European Green Deal. Of course, there are some empty boxes, some white boxes, and this is an indication of the fact that the SDGs are a more holistic framework. The European Green Deal is quite holistic, but not as holistic as the SDGs. So the prioritization of the SDGs as the only global agenda at the moment, together with the human rights agenda, is the right way to go. Now, in order to add in this cross-mapping the country-specific recommendations of the European semester process, we had the different categories of the recommendations. As you know, it's fiscal policies, investment, green, digital transition, taxation, social policies, education, finance, public administration, labor markets, and so on. And what we did was we focused on the target-specific results. So within the 17 SDGs, we have 115 targets that are relevant for the European member states. There are more targets, 169, but 115 are relevant for Europe. So we cross-map the performance of each and every of the 27 countries with regards to these targets with the recommendations of the European semester process. And we show whether there is a European semester process recommendation with regards to the SDGs, where we are facing major or significant challenges. In principle, if the European Commission was efficient in identifying the challenges in each and every country, then the European semester process recommendations should address all of the challenges. We see here, I have some examples of different countries. Sweden is the most sustainable country in the world, but the alignment of the European Commission recommendations is only 50% if you compare it with the challenges identified in the Sustainable Development Report that is published by UN SDSN. With regards to Germany, we have a better alignment, 63%, and with regards to Greece, we have an even better alignment, although much less sustainable as a country. We have a better alignment of 80%. On the whole, if you take the 27 countries in total, then the alignment is 72%, which is quite good. So country-specific recommendations efficiently address the challenges identified by the Sustainable Development Report, but there is still space for further alignment and improvement. With regards to prioritizing the European Green Deal, we prioritize them by identifying associations with addressing major SDG challenges and significant SDGs challenges. So we cross-map which of the European Green Deal policies can help in addressing the identified challenges against those identified in the Sustainable Development Report. The most important policies seem to be farm to fork, sustainable industry, elimination of pollution, and climate action. Then, after we've done this cross mapping, we move to suggest transformation portfolios of investments and policy reforms, and provide criteria for assessing the different interventions in order to help the countries to devise their recovery and resilience plans. With regards to technological and investment pathways, our report was heavily based on the work of FIN on technological pathways for 2050 climate neutrality. We know that in order to move from the vision of climate neutrality by 2050, we need actual technological pathways that will accelerate the transition. In 2021, that is this year, the EU will unleash new and revised climate and energy legislation in order to align all of its tools with the 55% target. So a revision of the emissions trading system and the market stability reserve, the effort sharing regulation for non-ETS emissions, the energy taxation directive, and the new carbon border tax that will be introduced. With regards to the technological pathways, what our recommendation is that the European Green Deal should be conceived on a systems approach because it simultaneously addresses multiple objectives, policy instruments, and technological solutions. The objectives are relevant, have to do with decarbonization, environmental sustainability, economic prosperity, and social inclusion. Many instruments, public investments, phase out of subsidies to fossil fuels, market mechanisms, regulatory frameworks, regulations on land use, and at the same time a wide range of current and emerging technological solutions. So what we need is to reinvent, to innovate our system, and to do that, we need a combination of system thinking and the process of innovation, so as to enable the transformative change that we need in order to build forward better. With regards to the roadmap to 2050 and technological pathways, the work produced by FIRM focused on power and suggested a mix of renewable solutions on industry, and suggested a focus on the hard-to-abate segments, cement, iron, steel, petrochemicals. With regards to transport, a focus on cleaning roadways, railways, airways, and navigation. And with regards to building, the identification of the need for new guidelines, for new buildings, and retrofitting strategies. And it is also important in this systemic approach to identify the many complementarities for managing the complexity of the energy system, vulnerable renewable energy sources, complementarity between zero carbon technologies, public and private investments, natural and engineered systems, mitigation and adaptation, centralized and decentralized solutions, actions and strategies, and research and development. So the holistic recommendation with regards to the technological pathways had to do with an explicit need for revising the national energy and climate plans and the national determined contributions within a Prot policy framework with clear goals, technological roadmaps, regulatory assignments to stakeholders, strong systems deliberation, public awareness, holistic approach, and of course managing the demand side. And the main mobilizers towards the climate neutrality are of course the renewable nature-based solutions and the circular economy. And with regards to the circular economy, we should I think we economists have a lot to do, because at the moment there is nothing economic about circular economy. Circular economy is a technological production, is the technology of production and consumption, and we are yet to identify the translation between the changes in the footprint of this circular production compared to a linear production. We are yet to translate it into monetary values, and we need to translate this into monetary values in order to be able to include them in cost-benefit analysis, and in order to be able to talk to the policymaker and convince them to prioritize them as investment projects. So circular economy produces a lot of economic benefits, opportunities for the companies, opportunities for a better environment and better health for the individuals. And what I'm saying is that we need to work on LCAs, and these LCAs be the change from the linear to the circular economy. The change in the footprint needs to get integrated, needs to be integrated, and we are working with the Climate Kick on a project exactly on this, with the total economic value framework, so that we monetize the change, the benefits, and of course the cost of the movement to circularity, and be able to argue for circularity, because circularity will create a lot of jobs, profits, will save the environment, and at the same time produces lovely opportunity for public-private partnership, because it produces both private and public externalities, positive and public and private positive externalities. Now, the movement to an increased ambition of 55% reduction in greenhouse gas emissions that we've committed to as European Union by 2030 needs an additional of 350 billion per year in all the sectors of the economy: power grid, power plants, industry, residential, and so on. So in order to achieve the additional financing, the role of sustainable finance is important. We need to revisit our fiscal, financial policies, and the way business report their profits and their footprint on the environment and the society. Now, with regards to sustainable finance, since the 1980s, governments were asked to intervene only for the purpose of fixing market failures. Now, governments need to make significant long-run investments to support rapid recovery from coronavirus shock. This is a significant calls for a significant entrepreneurial role for the state to provide these patients. And at the same time, we know that businesses will not invest unless they see an opportunity for growth. So turning mitigation and adaptation to climate into opportunities for investment and innovation is key. And we need to provide sustainable innovation with patient, long-term strategic finance. To do that, we need to revise at the macro level. We need to reconceptualize fiscal financial stability and the mission of central banks to include climate and environmental degradation, and the and the European Investment Bank and the European Investment Fund have the capacity and expertise to do this. At the meso level, we need national public investment organizations to provide positive sources for long-term patient finance, which will support sustainable investment. And at the micro level, we need companies to understand that the companies that will switch first towards sustainable green practices will be the most competitive, the most innovative, the most successful over time. The whole situation now is a lot focused on the EU taxonomy, this new classification system for sustainable economic activities, which creates common language for investors and lenders and allows scaling up private and public investments to finance the transition to climate neutrality. The challenge now is to connect green taxonomy with financial instruments and business reporting, and this is what we suggested in this report. We need hybrid matrices in order to connect shared value to shareholder value. At the moment, we have two separate narratives. The companies are asked to report their results with regards to how profitable they are, but also how good for people and the planet is. However, in this report, which this particular section was led by NL Foundation and Carlo Babas, we've suggested the possibility of a single hybrid measurement system that combines social and environmental impact with standard measures of financial performance. And at the moment, the new report of SDSN Europe of the Senior Working Group on the European Green Deal will mainly focus on the financial aspects of the transition. We believe that getting the financial institutions, but also the reporting from the companies right and consistent with the EU taxonomy and consistent with the new rules that are coming will be crucial. Now, with regards to the effects of the sustainability transition on jobs and skill, we show that investments in the line with the European Green Deal will lead to approximately 1 million new jobs in the energy and sustainable mobility, long-term on engineering and consumption. The catch here is that we need major reskilling and upskilling, and that very few opportunities will be there for low-skill jobs. Now, with regards to the distributional effects, we've considered virus EU climate policies, and we identified measures to mitigate the regressive effects of climate policies. So this was based on a detailed macroeconomic modeling based on the standard E3ME model baseline, and we assessed existing policy best practices to explore the patterns of inequality in Europe. So the 4 policies that have been considered as the best combination in terms of their simplicity, effectiveness, and deployability into the EU are redistributing revenues through lump sum transfer and lowering VAT taxes on energy, implementation of targeted energy efficiency measures, jobs retaining programs, and funding of subsidies of new low carbon technologies via general taxation. And we showcase that combining mitigation policy options can ensure more equality, increase GDP and employment, and have a progressive effect in all European regions. The most progressive effects seem to be in Southern Europe, a region that needs it the most. With regards to moving from strategic priorities to sector-specific policies, we identify the need for co-designing and implementing country-specific recovery and resilience plans in a way that we have explicit engagement of stakeholders. We have a comprehensive list of sustainability and resilience criteria. We recommend open source models, transparent methods, and stakeholder engagement. And of course, because timing is critical, as in all crises, post-pandemic fiscal stimulus should be guided with fast, clear guidance to steer policymakers between health protection, economic relief, and climate resilience. This is our map of stakeholder criteria to be used for devising the recovery and resilience plan. They are in two categories: environmental impact, economic and social impact. They identify the impact and they relate it to SDGs. So in closing this report, the main message: to return to normal economic stimulus is environmentally unsustainable and economically inferior. We have an opportunity to direct economic growth based on the European Green Deal and the SDGs. And the good news is that they are not two separate policies. They are mirror image of each other, and we should focus on transformations based on the SDGs and the European Green Deal for the transition to a green, digital, job-based, inclusive recovery from the pandemic. And so the Ellsberg Commission gives the same recommendations. I am honored to chair the Green Recovery Task Force, and the main messages are the same. Recovery packages should finance transformation for green, digital, and fair future. Recent commitments to carbon neutrality by the mid-century in Europe, in China, and in other major economies provide the momentum for deep transformation. At the same time, we've measured that 1/3 of global assets under management are now environmental, social, and governance space. So the recovery should build on this momentum as well. At the moment, financial resources devoted to and commitments made for post-COVID recovery are largely insufficient for green recovery, including most G20s. But this is not to bring despair, because at the moment, as I told you at the beginning of the speech, we are just facing with a short-term responses, the main challenges brought by the COVID-19. The recovery and resilience plans are not yet into action. So I believe that the greenness of the recovery will become obvious by September onwards. Low-income countries and some emerging markets all urgently need support to address the immediate consequences of the pandemic, and we need to set the foundations for long-term international cooperation on the environment. In 2021, with the biodiversity COP, the climate COP, and the World Food Summit in Copenhagen is a good place to start. And this is what I said before, that the recovery and the greenness or not of this recovery will start being obvious from September onwards, because if you see the plan for the recovery and resilience plans of the Commission, it is only after 9 months that we will have the plans approved, and 13% of the total support given up front to kickstart the recovery. At the same time, the IMF and the World Bank have committed 2 days ago to support a new allocation of 650 billion worth of IMF's reserve asset special drawing rights to ensure that governments in low-income and middle-income countries have the means to combat COVID pandemic and start on the path of investment recovery, and this is quite crucial. We are also working with machine learning approaches in order to do the cross-mapping in much more detail, in order to take into account all the new policy papers that have been appeared in the European Commission this year. So we are now working with machine learning approaches and to cross-map the detailed targets in the SDGs and the details in the European Green Deal policies, the biodiversity strategy, the farm to fork strategy, the renovation way for Europe, the climate law, the climate pact, the stepping up Europe's 2030 climate ambition, the chemical strategy for sustainability, the strategy to reduce methane emissions, the EU climate action progress report, the EU strategy for adaptation to climate policy, all the policies that have to do with energy, the modernization fund, the assessment on national energy and climate plans, the recommendations on energy poverty, offshore renewable, the policy on circular economy, and all the finance policies, the framework for sustainable investments, the supplement to EU taxonomy. So you can see that many things are happening, many things are trying to set the foundations for the implementation of the European Green Deal and the implementation of green and digital recovery plans, but a lot needs to be done in a very short time period. Now let me show you very briefly a sketch of all our different projects and what we try to do as Cluster for Sustainability Transition, which basically includes the institutions that I direct in Greece and abroad, and we work in research and innovation, we work in innovation acceleration and deep demonstration, and we work in education and training and awareness. Our first big thematic area, and each slide you see, it's one different project with a European or global consortium, runs for 2 to 5 years. Our first thematic priority is climate change mitigation and adaptation, green, digital, just recovery, circular economy, and the systems innovation approach. We also work a lot in blue growth. We have 2 global initiatives, Euro-Asian Blue Growth Initiative for the 4 seas, the Black Sea, the European, the Caspian, and the RRC, a global roundtable for sustainable shipping and ports, many Horizon, Climate Kick, Interact projects that have to do with all aspects from energy production from the sea to sustainable spatial planning to marine protected areas, coastal management, and so on. And we also run a global accelerator financed by Climate Kick on maritime clean tech practices. So our vision is to become the global initiative for decarbonization and adaptation to climate change to marine in the marine sector. Our third thematic area is water, food, energy, Nexus, smart agriculture, and smart urban water systems. And lately, in addition to quite a few Horizon and other projects, we've won the big ERC Synergy grant, which focuses on developing the next generation of urban drinking water systems, and I will tell you a bit about this in the next slides. Just to finish with our thematic priorities, we work a lot on innovation acceleration, training for upskilling and reskilling. We run the EIT Climate Kick Hub of Greece, and in addition to accelerating various companies that have to do with the transition to a climate neutral economy. And in addition to the thematic accelerator on maritime, we also run programs like Pioneers into Practice that train people into sustainable practices. And we also run global events like the Climathon that includes many countries around the world. Now, with regards to this ERC project, our aim is to design the next generation of smart urban drinking water systems. It is an interdisciplinary research team. My heart is in interdisciplinarity. I believe that all problems are interdisciplinarity, or most problems are interdisciplinary, so solutions need to be interdisciplinary as well. In this project, we have 4 PIs, and we bring together water science, systems and control theory, economics, decision science, and machine learning. So our aim here is to design future-proof drinking water system, which is a very difficult problem because water infrastructure investments are done for at least 100 years, but we don't know how the cities will evolve over time. We don't know how demand will change. We don't know how various stakeholders with conflicting opinions will behave. We are not certain at all about climate change, the relevant risk and the relevant deep uncertainty that is connected with it. And at the same time, we also need to design smart operation and management using increased sensing. But these kind of designs of digital smart solutions have much shorter time steps. They work in minutes or days or weeks. So we need to integrate this short-run framework into the long-run framework. And well, we know that we are not able to predict the future, but we aim to develop future scenarios and explore them. And due to the large size of the resulting solutions and their complexity, we require powerful explanatory machine learning methodologies to help us shift through those data sets and come up with explainable recommendations. With regards to the human-centric challenges and the challenges that derive from economics and decision processes, one major challenge is to understand how people are motivated. Some people are motivated by fairness concerns, so people differ in their tastes with regards to bananas and apples, but they also differ with regards to how selfish or fair-minded they are, and this has important economic consequences. So we need a unifying framework of how people make decisions between different goods and different mindsets, but also over time and how we integrate the short and the medium run. Time and uncertainty are correlated, and at the same time, uncertainty takes the form of ambiguity. So we need an integration of short-term and long-term horizon, an integration of risk and ambiguity, an integration of fair-minded and selfish-minded people, and we need a deeper understanding of how human preferences with regards to non-marketed goods are structures, and we are going to devise a choice and lab experiments aided by virtual reality in order to unveil human preferences. So what we do is a novel combination of the literatures of subjective well-being and experimental behavioral economics, and with regards to the implementation of the solutions that we are going to come up, we will use a systems innovation approach to allow the stakeholders to co-design the future vision and the pathways towards that future vision. This ERC basically derives from my previous work on deep uncertainty, which derives from the explicit recognition in the IPCC report in 2007 that at the moment, we don't have objective probabilities for many events that are related to climate change, and the literature on how to account for ambiguity in the total economic value, although it's growing, there is no agreed standard. And based on this literature review, where we try to find solutions on how people behave under deep uncertainty and integrate these solutions in the mathematical underpinnings for our valuation models, instead of finding ideas to derive the theoretical underpinnings of our valuation models, we ended up criticizing this literature. And I'm going to give you a very quick snapshot of our work on this and call it a day. So give me another 5 minutes and we'll finish. So we work on ambiguity aversion, and the basic concepts that we bring into this mathematical literature and decision theory is model Bayesianism, which derives from Bayesian epistemology, small words, which are words where a small number of propositions are required to cover all cases of interest, and the main result of the paper is that ambiguity aversion under model Bayesianism collapses to dynamic inconsistency of beliefs, and that in small words, model Bayesianism, apart from normatively appealing, is descriptively possible. So unknown probabilities come into the economic literature in 1954 from Leonard Savage in the Foundations of Statistics, where we have the simultaneous axiomatization of subjective probability and expected utility maximization. So an economic agent does not need exogenous objective probabilities, says Savage. All that he needs is in his own mind. And his representation theorem provides a separation of tastes from beliefs, and it delivers subjective tastes as represented by utilities, subjective beliefs as represented by probabilities, and subjective probabilities and utilities, which are combined with the expected utility theory. Now we have this Ellsberg paradox, which basically points to ambiguity aversion, which identifies deviations from Savage axioms. So the big question is whether do economic agents behave according to Savage axioms? We have evidence against subjective expected utility behavior, which clearly shows that people are not probabilistically sophisticated. So the main point of Ellsberg was that each agent faces two kinds of events, ambiguous and unambiguous events, and preferring to bet on unambiguous rather than ambiguous events is inconsistent with probabilistic sophistication. So this is the paradox that brings evidence against Savage subjective expected utility. And this is a major issue in economics because we have many cases where we don't know the probabilities of the events, of the uncertainties that we are facing, one of which is climate change, and we need to understand how people behave under this deep uncertainty. So the major point here is how we understand the evidence provided by Ellsberg paradox. Okay, we know that axioms of subjective expected utility fail, but is this evidence of irrationality, or is this evidence that the subjective expected utility conditions of rationality are too demanding and we need new axiomatization to replace the axioms of Savage work? Well, the literature has gone down this road. We have Schmeidle proposing not additive probabilities, and Guibois and Schmeidle multiple probabilities. They have been endorsed by the literature. They have been criticized that they are too pessimistic, but they are basically what the literature proposes as a solution to ambiguity aversion. So, as we said before, the source of ambiguity aversion is the fact that at the moment of formation of his beliefs, the decision maker is faced with asymmetric information about the objective probability chances. So he has specific information information about some events and only background information for some others. So the question is, should we allow specific information to affect the formation of prior beliefs, or should we allow only background information to affect the formation of prior beliefs? Background information are general characteristics of the chance set up, so it includes all hypotheses or evidence relevant to hypothesis and all entailment relations between hypothesis and evidence. Specific information are just actual outcomes or information of objective chances, and they should be utilized via conditionalization on the prior. So if you receive specific information at point T, and you want to construct your prior at this point, if you leave both specific and background information to affect the construction of your prior, then the decision maker forms the new posterior probability of event A in the light of evidence E, in the way I show here. So if he follows this way of constructing the posterior by using both a prior that is constructed using both background and specific information, then this particular decision maker follows classical Bayesianism. If, however, the decision maker at point T, where he has both specific and private and background information, goes back at point 0 and forms his prior using only background information, and then this prior is used as the vehicle to update his belief by conditionalization on new evidence, including the specific information, then we have a new way of Bayesian update. The decision maker forms his new posterior probability of event A in the light of evidence E, and this is conditional on the specific information and the new evidence, and the decision maker does so throughout his life. So in order to be modern Bayesianism, we need counterfactual probabilistic reasoning. We need the ability of the decision maker to go back to time 0, use only background information, form his prior based on background information, and then conditionalize on the specific information and the new evidence. If we use modern Bayesianism rather than classical Bayesianism, we are in good shape in order to face the issue of ambiguity aversion, because modern Bayesianism avoids cognitive dissonance, that is the psychological finding that agents treat hypothetical and actual evidence differently. For example, the probability that an agent assigns to the hypothesis, I shall live for at least another 5 years, conditional on the event I am diagnosed with aggressive cancer, is likely to be bigger than the probability that she would assign to the hypothesis if the event B was not actual. And this is something that the psychologists find all the time. And this cognitive dissonance disappears once you use modern Bayesianism. At the same time, modern Bayesianism fits better within Bayesian confirmations theory because it avoids certain contradictions arising with the principal. The principle basically says that once you know with certainty the objective probability of an event, then your subjective probability of the event needs to become equal to this objective probability. It also handles the problem of old evidence. Scientists commonly argue for their new theories using old evidence. For example, Einstein used arguments for his 1915 gravitational equations that was explained by the anomalous advance of the perihelion of Mercury. That was evidence that existed half a century before. So modern Bayesianism solves this issue and at the same time assures faster convergence of opinion compared to classical Bayesianism. And of course, it dissolves the problem of ambiguity aversion. So in closing, in small words, I would suggest modern Bayesianism because it dissolves many of the issues that we have in decision theory and we face in behavioral economic, but of course this is not relevant for large worlds. A small world is a set of propositions whose number of elements is small. In a small world, the Bayesian can assign probabilities to all propositions of interest. And if we move away from small words and non-evolving words, then we have, again, unresolved problems. Because if we assume that at some point in time, a new hypothesis comes up and motivated by this new hypothesis, we acquire new evidence, and we attempt to update our beliefs based on the new evidence. If we consult our prior, we can see that if we are in a large world or in a world that is evolving, we have no assigned probability for this new hypothesis, because back then, when you go back at date 0, where you have constructed all your prior, this particular hypothesis was unconceived. So to conclude, as Bimo said, only in a small world where you can look before you leave is possible to consider everything that might be relevant to the decisions you change. And this was something that you make, and this was something that Savage also explicitly mentioned with regards to his theory. He explicitly said that his theory does not allow concept formation, and that it is a static, that the nature of the theory is static. So modern Bayesianism resolves the problem of ambiguity aversion. In modern Bayesianism, ambiguity aversion collapses to dynamic inconsistency, and this is relevant to the time inconsistency of economic instruments literature as well. It is non-negotiable irrationality. Modern Bayesianism assumes that informing your subjective priors, the agent makes use of background information only. Specific information is allowed to affect beliefs only through conditionalization. It is possible in small worlds. If you want to go to a large world, then there is this evolving probability model where you change your probability in the light of new evidence any way you want, as long as you respect the coherence of probability. And I will stop here. Thank you very much for your patience.
Thank you, Phoebe. Thank you for your presentation. Very interesting. So two different approaches also. So the second is more on the details on the technical part. And so it's very interesting also because it's focused on uncertainty, and so focused on when you we were speaking about this problem, I was speaking about exactly about dynamic inconsistency. So the problem where they can arise in some cases, and especially I worked on this in some cases with hyperbolic discount factors and so on. So it's a very, maybe we can discuss on this, but at the moment I would like to, I know that there are some questions for you. And so I now leave the floor to Simone Borghesi from University of Siena European University Institute. I leave you the floor.
Thank you, Sergio. Thank you, Phoebe. Hi to both of you. It's a pleasure to see you. I have one question, a very general one, if you want, not a technical one. But as I was listening to your presentation, there is something that I have in my mind. I share with you, fully share with you, both the interdisciplinary approach, and the enthusiasm to face the situation, the challenges that we have to face ahead of us. I think it was you to write, never waste a good opportunity. Well, it was probably Churchill to say it first, but you wrote it
even
last
before
year.
Churchill.
Now, what you're describing, however, it's a real revolution. I would say a Copernican revolution, right? Which involves all spheres of our knowledge. And now, my question is, how can we answer the skepticals who basically argue you're never going to do that? It's too much. It's too many things altogether. You know, this is a question that I ask you because I sometimes have to face this kind of critiques to my own vision of the future, so to speak. So just to make an example, I think we need more cooperation to get out of the present crisis, and this crisis underlines how relevant, or better, essential cooperation is. But on the other hand, the skepticals argue with me saying, you don't even have cooperation within Europe, and so, or within Italy. How can you expect to cooperate globally? So what's your answer to this?
Well, Simone, my answer is that there is a part of me that has all these worries, but I try to put it at the very part of my head, my mind. Why? Because skeptics have never changed the world. Those who have changed the world are those who have pioneered more clever systems. And it is, I think, impossible at this stage of the advancements of scientific knowledge to argue that single discipline, out of systems thinking has any chance of creating any significant transformation change. It has a chance to create marginal changes, incremental changes, but we don't have time for incremental changes. We need by 2030 to achieve the SDGs. We need by 2050 to become climate neutral. We have the technology, we have the money. What we don't have is the pathway. And we don't have the pathway because we've been working in silos, in single disciplines, in structures where the policymakers were not directly working with the science, where the stakeholders did not understand what the policymakers proposed and what the sciences were doing. So everybody was working in silos with low levels of awareness, low levels of understanding. I'm not saying it's going to be easy. I'm not saying that it is even a certainty that it is doable. I'm just saying that if you ask me in 2019 if a vaccine was could be discovered for a new virus, a vaccine could be discovered, produced, and deployed for the whole of the world in 8 months, I would probably tell you I don't think so, but it happened. So I think what is needed, especially because we have the science, the technology, and the money, is understanding of the urgency of the situation. And it's not just the urgency of the coronavirus, the urgency is the climate change that is a much bigger threat than the single coronavirus. And in the Lancet committee, I also follow the presentations from the biomedical research. There are 6,000 other confirmed viruses that can make at any point the cross-species leap. These are zoonotic viruses that can make the cross-species leap because to loss of biodiversity anytime. So imagine a situation where we have 2 of these viruses at work at a single point. I'm not saying 5, I'm saying just 2. And these are just the 6,000 confirmed viruses. What we have, and there are others that are not confirmed. So we are facing a critical situation. I know that it might seem that we've been talking about crisis throughout our lives, but the climate crisis, the biodiversity crisis is huge. We need to transform our systems in order to integrate a sustainable interaction between humans and nature, and the economy is a crucial system that connects both, because it connects the behavior of the people with the effects of this behavior on the planet in which the people live. And the finances of the whole thing is also crucial, because it's the only way to accelerate the change. So sustainable finance is important, and of course education, education, education. How many interdisciplinary courses you have at the schools, at the universities, how many people you produce that are able to be employed in the new sections of the circular economy, of nature-based solutions, of renewables, of climate adaptation projects, how many people you have in terms of economists and lawyers that understand the EU taxonomy and can implement it and can help in the use of this taxonomy for deploying the technology that you need in order to make the transformational transition. I'll stop here because you know, I am passionate and I can go for
and I like it, you know, and I stop here my questions because I want to leave room to the others, but I will have more, and also some more technical questions. But thank you, Phoebe, for your answer.
Thank you, Simone.
Thank you, Simone. Thank you. Now we have another question. Yes.
So there are 2 questions. Among the SDGs, we don't find anything about sustainability of sovereign debt. What do you think about that? Do you see any problem for the recent growing government debt for facing the consequences of the pandemic event? Definitely, I see a problem. And the second question is, for what concerns the sustainable finance, what do you think is more important between financing sustainable firms and making finance in a sustainable way? Okay, with regards to the first question, I always make this point myself. At the moment, we are creating all these recovery packages. They are financed by government debt. Many countries don't have the fiscal space for this, especially outside Europe, but also within Europe. I come from a country that is relevant to this, very, very relevant to debt crisis. We have not really exited the debt crisis, and we have faced another crisis, the coronavirus crisis. So sovereign debt is an important issue. I think we are handling it without care. I also think that we, in addition to the issue of sovereign debt, we are going to face inflationary pressures, because we are moving in completely uncharted territory with the current fiscal stimulus and monetary policies. So I think if we have major worries at the moment, it's not worries that have to do with the transformation, because we have the technology and the knowledge to implement and deploy. Our major worries should focus on sovereign debt and monetary policy and inflationary pressures. And at the moment, I don't think anybody has the answer with regards to this. what are the trade-offs we need to face? What are the trade-offs between short-term and long-term within this area? And how the monetary aspect of this crisis, the monetary effects of this crisis will evolve. It's really uncharted territory. I think it's very dangerous, and I think that the current claim I dare to say during the Lancet Commission that we might have issues with inflation, and the answer was, of course, inflation is a risk, but we have more immediate pressures now, and we do, and it is absolutely true and correct. But how do we handle this trade-off between short-term and long-term? How do we handle the fact that this is an unprecedented situation? We have not had such a fiscal stimulus before in history, at least during peacetime. So I think we are in very dangerous waters. With regards to SDGs and sovereign debt, I would think that the SDG that has to do with economic growth includes, although not explicitly a target on sovereign debt, but it does include worries with regards to the fiscal and monetary aspects of economic growth. Now, with regards to your second question on sustainable finance, financing sustainable firms against making finance in a sustainable way. Well, I'm not sure I completely understand the question, but let me tell you what I think. I don't think we should only finance sustainable firms. I think we should finance the transition to sustainability, because sustainable firms already made the decision. They can access funds based on EU taxonomy, and they are more or less sustainable. I think what will be crucial for the success of the deployment of EU taxonomy would be to identify the firms that are willing to make the transition to sustainability, and they are willing to be monitored against this transition. And at the same time, the finance should be fueled not only towards the deployment of the technology, but also towards capacity building within the firms in order to be able to be real participants in the sustainability transition of their firm. So, and the finance should go both to sustainable and non-sustainable, but committed to sustainability, and at the same time the finance should be made in a sustainable way. This is crucial. So devising and developing economic instruments that can support sustainable finance will be the backbone for the success or not of EU taxonomy and the current financial regulations. I hope I answered your questions.
Okay, thank you, Phoebe. There are other two questions. One again in a chat.
Which tool do we have to prioritize in terms of interventions or investment? Do we have to start from one specific SDG, from one single sector, or from the specific environmental issues? Well, what we suggested in the report is to, this is a usual question, and it's a good question, and it's a very policy relevant question. What we suggested there is to go sector by sector, see each sector in a holistic way, and prioritize the policies that seem to address the biggest challenges in each specific sector. So this job has to be done at a subnational level, sector by sector, identify the major systemic problems, and then identify the policies that can provide answers to these systemic problems. So when you look closely in a sector, you are able to identify the economic problems, the financial problems, the technology problems, the environmental problems, and at the same time also identify the problems that it transposes, how these problems transpose into the social cohesion. So by identifying and this is exactly what we do in systems innovation, we work with all the stakeholders in one sector, the policymaker, the local authorities, the NGOs, the financial institutions, the technology developers, the scientists, and we map where they want to be, their future vision in 2030. And then we go back to today, we agree on a very good specification of the problem, the areas and the exact problems in each areas, in each sector. And then we co-design with them pathways, technological policy and financial pathways that can allow them to move from the current problematic situation to their future vision. This is what systems innovation does. We have implemented it in various places around the world. In Europe, it's much easier than in any other places of the world. And it shows results because all stakeholders are engaged. They become co-owners of the solution, co-owners of the economic and social benefits of the solution and environmental benefits of the solution. And I dare to say that this is the only way you can really devise implementable pathways, by engaging all the stakeholders and co-designing with them the solutions. And this is exactly what the climate pact of the European Union is doing. And I think that it is amazing that the European Union understood the strength and the value of the engagement of the technical, but also social and environmental stakeholders in the design of the pathways, of the solution pathways.
Okay, perfect. Now we have the last question that is on your chat.
Thank you, Sergio. So what about applying the same experience to developing countries, particularly Middle Eastern countries or post-conflict countries, particularly in terms of environmental issues? I totally agree. I mean, I work with the World Bank and other international organizations, and also with the Commission in Africa, in Asia, in Latin America. And the approaches we have are the same. And as you've seen in the recommendations of the Lancet Commission, we are not recommending anything different for the other places in the world. What we are recommending is the same, but of course we need to take into account the different capacities, the different cultures, the different policy framework, and the different, let's say, educational system, education and awareness system. But it is absolutely true, I agree, that we need to apply the concepts and the methods and the strategies that we are developing in Europe everywhere else. And it is not just the developing world, it's also the US, China, that are also, we are working with the US and China, and we are comparing experiences. We are working under the UN SDSN, UN Sustainable Development Solutions Network, and we have a forthcoming webinar between Europe recovery plans, US recovery plans, and China recovery plans. And we try to identify how collaboration and exchange of experiences and knowledge can help in advancing, accelerating a recovery that is resilient, is sustainable, is inclusive, and it creates positive growth job multipliers. So a definite yes. But we should say, and we should be proud about this, Europe is a leader in this green and digital recovery, and we are recognized as such by the US and also China.
Okay, thank you very much. Now we can close here. Now I would like to thank you again, Phoebe. So we will see. I will also thank all the participants for being here, and also we will see for the next conference in the 21 and 23 of April. Thank you again, Phoebe, and we will see for the next work together. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having me, and a pleasure to be working with you, Sergio.
Our pleasure.
Take care.
Our pleasure. Take care.